What is up, guys? Welcome to the final installment in my SCX24 Dodge Hardbody swap. You can see we're in the home stretch. We've got everything just about done. We've got the interior all finished up and detailed out nice. Did a little bit of weathering in there to kind of dirty it all up. You see we've got our chassis done. Our wiring's all tucked nice and neat down underneath the interior. Got that Mofo 030 Micro Beast in there. Got our battery tray under the hinged bed. I haven't come up with a way to actually latch the bed down yet, but I don't think I'm going to. Once the battery's in here, it doesn't really bounce at all. I've been running this thing around on my indoor course a little bit. I'm not worried about it. This isn't a crawler, this is just a scale trail truck anyways. I mean, with these little 0.7 tires on here, it's not that capable, but it looks awesome. So now the final piece of the puzzle is the cab and getting that painted and mounted, which I've already done. Now this was done with Gravity paints. This is Chevrolet Velocity Yellow, I believe, and Eleanor Pepper Gray. But I had a little problem with the yellow on this. Now hopefully you can see in the camera there that Pepper Gray has a real nice shine to it. But the roof there, the yellow, not quite as much. The yellow also has a lot worse orange peel in it, even though all of my spraying settings and everything were the same. I think the issue was just the shelf life on the paint was up. I had bought both of these colors probably 3 to 4 years ago now for another project that I never ended up doing. Thought I'd use them on this just to get them used up, and unfortunately it didn't work out. So now, to save myself the time of stripping this cab, which I probably will do eventually. I'm definitely going to hold on to this and potentially use it for something else in the future. I hopped on eBay and just got a replacement cab kit. Now this comes with all of the pieces, you know, the hood, the firewall, the front valance piece, and the core support. So we're going to go ahead and get this one painted up and on the truck, and I'll show you how I paint my plastic models. So now the first step in painting a body is to get it ready for paint, obviously. Now these model kit bodies, they come with mold lines on them from where the separate pieces of the mold come together, and where all those plates meet, you end up with these mold lines that you can actually catch with your fingernail. They stand out very prominently. They're very easy to see. You've usually got them right on top of the fenders, usually along your pillars where they meet the roof, which on this truck, that's actually in a good spot because that's actually a body seam on these real Dodges where the roof panel meets the back of the cab. You've also got, you know, just a little bit of cleanup. There's a little part here you have to remove that's molded in there for stability. There's just a little bit of flashing. This is an older mold. And there's also a very faint line around the back of the cab, which on the real trucks is actually a small strip of chrome trim. But I'm also going to go ahead and sand that off and do more of a base model style truck. There's also just a little bit of a mold line around the door handles. So the easiest way to clean those up, I've found, is to first take a Sharpie, you find your mold lines, and then just trace along the top of them with the Sharpie. This is going to give you a guide coat for when you go to sand them. And then this one also kind of follows the A-pillar right up the front of the door seam there. At least a little ways anyway. Looks like it goes all the way up to the roof panel. Now because they're raised, if you use a regular tip fine point Sharpie, you can usually catch those lines with your Sharpie and stay right on them fairly easily. And then when you go to sand these off, and it's alright if you mess up and get off a little bit, you can clean that off with some rubbing alcohol, or you're going to sand it off anyways. But that's really all I see here primarily for mold lines. I'm just kind of going to make some notes here of where I see a little bit of flashing, a little bit of run out from where the molds kind of wear out over time, and you get almost a little bit of an overshot down in like the bottoms of the body. So once you've got all that marked out, you can go ahead and sand it. Alright, so once you've got the body sanded down, get all your mold lines sanded off, get everything smoothed up good, I usually like to take it down to about 1,000 or 1,500 grit. Get rid of those 500 grit scratches. Smooth it out good. The paint will fill the scratches better, and you'll end up with a better quality finish overall. Once that's done, you go ahead and paint prep it. Now you can wash it with like a Dawn dish soap or something like that. You could wipe it down with some isopropyl alcohol. I've got this old Tester's plastic prep that I use for all of my stuff. Works really good. It's also safe on Lexan. Pretty good stuff. Does a really good job of cleaning it up. Just make sure you get everything good with it. Now you want to clean off any of that sanding dust that might be left on the body, as well as any oils from your hands that might be on your body. I also recommend washing your hands real good with a good degreasing soap before you handle any plastic that's about to be painted. Again, just for best quality results. You don't want to give your paint any chance to fisheye. 90% of a good paint job is all in the prep work. You gotta be careful not to knock that core support out of there. Okay, and then once it's all paint prepped, you're gonna want something to hold it with while you're painting. For the hood and stuff like this, I just like to use old empty soda bottles or water bottles. Fill them half to 2/3 of the way with just water, so they've got some weight to them, so they'll just stand up for the most part. You can also use that for cabs. I used to, but I've since gotten these Tamiya spray stands. These things are awesome. You get this one here that you can just clip your bodies onto. And now I'm going to clip it up fairly close into the nose, fairly close to the core support, so that I can hopefully still get up in and kind of spray up inside and get the roof and all of that for the interior color. Because on these old trucks, your interior color generally matched your exterior color. So, gonna want to make sure we get paint coverage all up in there too. So we'll go ahead, get these parts in primer, let that flash off good, and then we'll throw the first coat of color on, and we'll go from there. Alright, so we've got the primer on the cab. I just use Tamiya Gray Fine Surface Primer. It's one of my favorite primers to use for model kits and model kit bodies. Works really well, lays really flat. You build it up pretty good in 2 coats, and then you don't even need to wet sand it to get a good shiny finish. So this has been drying for about an hour now after the second coat. Completely dry to the touch. And that's the great thing about these Tamiya paints, is they dry pretty quick. And I find about an hour after your primer is a good recoat window to add your first color coat. You get too far past that, you're into the point where now you really want to let it sit for 24 hours before you go and put your color on it. And that's all just what I figured out, trial and error, using this stuff for a while now. So 1 to 2.5 hours after your last coat of primer, you can go ahead and you should be good to start putting your color on. Now the first color on this truck is going to be Tamiya's TS16 Yellow. This is about as close of a match to the yellow that I originally used on the first cab I painted, which was actually I believe Velocity Yellow. Is a Corvette color. So we're going to go ahead, spray it with this, get a few good coats of this on, and then we're going to let it dry for 24 hours, tape it off, spray the second color, let that dry for 24 hours, Maybe wet sand it a little bit along the tape edges if need be, and then we'll throw the clear coat on it. Alright, so once you've let your first color dry up for a little bit, you can go ahead and mask off for your second color. Now, a few tips on masking off. Number one, you want to make sure you burnish down the edges of your tape really good. And also, use a good quality masking tape. I use Tamiya masking tape primarily. Works great. You almost never get any bleed through, especially if you paint properly. Once I use that to edge everything out, though, I mean, the stuff is pretty expensive, so to save a little money and not use a lot of it to mask the whole thing, I'll just use some cheap Walmart masking tape just to kind of mask off the bigger areas. You can get that Tamiya masking tape in a bunch of different widths. You can get it right down to some really narrow stuff. I've got a couple of small strips on the sides of the hood here, as well as down on the bottom of the body on each side. So those will, once we peel them off, those will leave a nice yellow pinstripe inside of our secondary color. Now, any of you guys out there that are Dodge guys, maybe you can see what's going on here. I'm going for kind of an homage to a 79 Macho Edition Power Wagon with this paint scheme. So now the biggest thing with your second color is you want to build it up very slowly. You don't want to spray any wet coats on until after you've sprayed on enough light coats to seal the edge of that tape. Now, if you wanted to, you could actually go over it first with a few coats of clear before you do your secondary color. That's pretty common in the model kit world, especially for like two-tone race cars and stuff. Personally, I don't like to do it that way. I think it builds up too much paint thickness myself. So I like to just take my time, do 4 or 5 very light mist coats over everything. Make sure you don't get too much going on your tape lines until after you've built up enough to seal up that tape a little better. Pretty rare that you get any bleed through with the Tamiya masking tape, but you want to limit the possibility as much as you can. So we'll go ahead and shoot the next color on this, then we'll let that dry up for, good few hours at least. Let it get good and hard before we start peeling the tape off, and we'll go from there. Alright, so just so you guys can get an idea, that's usually about what I look for my first few coats on any two-tone paint job. I spray with the can or airbrush, whichever I'm using, far enough away that the paint still hits the body wet. You don't want it to hit the body dry, but far enough away that you can go fast enough to get a nice light mist coat just like this. And I'll build up 3, 4, 5 coats just like this, however many it takes, before I feel comfortable to start laying on wet coats. And then when I do, I'll do 1 or 2 light to medium wet coats before I start spraying on good heavy glossy coats. So, well, there she is. Paint scheme reminiscent of the 79 Macho Power Wagons. Tamiya TS16 yellow and TS38 gunmetal. I did make one mistake though. I forgot to put the tape on for the yellow stripes on the cowl so they'd match the hood. Oh well, it's too late now. It is what it is. Still gonna look awesome. Now I got just the tiniest little bit of paint underneath the tape on each side of the cowl. That's gonna be pretty easy to deal with. Honestly, I probably won't even deal with it at all. I think I might just go ahead and throw some clear coat on it, call it good, because everything else came out perfect. Now you can see down in the door seams where the tape wasn't exactly perfect and there's a little bit of color blending back and forth there. That's all going to be picked out with Tamiya black panel liner anyway, so you won't see that. And also, there's some, like up here on the top of the windshield frame, where it wasn't masked the best, but that's okay, because that whole windshield frame is going to end up getting picked out in either black or chrome, whichever way I decide to go with that. But other than that, I mean, it came out pretty much perfect. Good enough for a rock crawler, at least. So now I'm going to let this all cure up good for at least 24 hours. Realistically, it's probably going to be closer to 48, because I actually realized I have to make a run to my local RC shop and pick up another can of Tamiya Clear so I can clear this thing. But you see, the paint job we got, actually got a good one this time. Once I get the clear on it, I'll pick out some of the little details like the door handle and the locks and whatnot, and get it put on the chassis, and we'll do the final reveal. Alright guys, so I skipped ahead a little bit, skipped a lot of the final assembly stuff, just to try to keep this video as short as possible, so we're going to hop right into the final reveal. Now just as a reminder, this truck started out as an SCX-24 deadbolt and a Dodge Little Red Express model kit. And here's what we've got now. So I've got you a little bit of a different camera angle here, get you down a little closer to the truck. I mean, this thing just came out awesome. So, we've got the little 0.7 BFG all-terrains on a set of 3D printed steel wheels, styrene fabricated front bumper and flatbed, and the paintwork just came out way better than I expected. There's actually no clear coat on this as of right now. I couldn't get any locally, so I'm just not going to bother. I mean, it's just a trail truck anyways. It's going to get beat up. It's going to get scarred up. It's not like it's a capable crawler, so it's not really going to see a whole lot of rugged terrain. So I'm not really worried about it. But it looks good enough. So obviously the model kit came with the 77-78 grill, because the Little Red Express was a 78. I picked up this 74, 75, 76 conversion grill off of eBay. This is just a cast resin piece. I'm assuming molded out of one of the older Ertl releases of a 75 Dodge. But you can see, paint scheme wise, pretty reminiscent of the 79 Macho editions. Now this is Tamiya TS16 yellow and TS38 gunmetal. Little bit of Tamiya acrylic paints, some rubber black to do the vent window posts and the windshield trim. Just a little bit of silver Sharpie to pick out the wiper blades, a little bit of panel liner, the door seams, and the cowl vents. A little bit of Tamiya chrome silver for the door handles. You know, it doesn't take much to detail these things out nicely and really make them look good. Now, eventually, I'm going to design up and 3D print a Warren Bellevue style winch just to stick in here for a little extra looks. Because of the way the body has to be stretched a little bit to get it over the chassis, I wasn't able to put the little filler valance beneath the grill because it just kept popping out. So there's a little bit of a gap down here that's more than what I like. And initially I was going to try to put the model kit radiator in there. Found out I was going to have to trim the bottom of it to get it to fit around the servo horn. So I just popped that back off and I'll leave it. Not a big deal. There's no actual engine detail in here at all anyways. So, I mean, under the hood, we've just got the ESC. Hopefully you can see it. Decased and stuck in there the only way it would fit. You can see we've got the little antenna off the ESC sticking up through the fender, right where the antennas are on the real trucks. And then, of course, under the flatbed is where the battery goes. This will only fit the stock size 350 milliamp hour battery, just because of the way the bed mounts. I've built this flatbed as thin as possible, but that's still the largest battery that'll fit. So it is what it is, but you know, you got the wire extension back here, so you can just plug the battery right in. Leave the ESC turned on, you never even have to open the hood. So I don't have a way to hold the bed down. I tried experimenting with a little Velcro off the battery strap, but it ended up being too thick and pushing the bed up so it wouldn't sit flat. But I mean, it settles down behind the cab good enough that for what I'll be doing with it. I mean, this is mostly going to be a shelf queen anyways, so I'm not really worried about it. Now eventually I will do a full build breakdown video on this truck, just as I've done on a few of my others. But I mean, otherwise it's really nothing special. We just got stock deadbolt axles. I don't believe there's even an overdrive in this one. Trail skid plate. You get these Yeah Racing kind of adjustable links in the front on the lower, and then a aluminum upper Y-link. Got metal drive shafts. Now these are deadbolt fronts, and I believe these are C10 rears to get the wheelbase shortened up to where I wanted it to be. Initially I thought about modifying the step side bed and using that on this, but I couldn't get the wheelbase quite where it needed to be, so I just opted to go for the flatbed. You've got the sides of the floor pans from the model kit stuck on there, and that's actually what helps mount the cab, and a lot of that's covered better in parts 1 and 2, but we did manage to get the full interior in there, and I'll post some better pics from that I took with my phone. But the full interior is in there. I only had to notch a little bit of the floor right at the front of the middle and passenger seat for the transmission to stick up through. Other than that, everything just fit amazing. So I'll end this out probably with a little bit of running video on my indoor course and some better photos for you, and hope you enjoyed. Thanks for watching.